Good afternoon, everyone, and today we're going to present to you all single sign-on technologies. The group members are Frank Nanton, Nazem Karim, Kemchan, a new member Vincent Ramdani, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, and Andrew Kadogan. The agenda for today is what is single sign-on. We look at the advantages of single sign-on, types of single sign-on as well, examples. We'll do a case study and we'll do a summary of those case studies. What is single sign-on? Single sign-on is an authentication process in a client-server relationship where the user or client can either enter one name and password and have access to more than one applications or access to a number of resources within the enterprise. It is one of the most important aspects of identity and access management. What are the advantages of single sign-on? Firstly, it reduces operational costs for any business, reduce time to access data, especially for the end user, improve user experience, no password list to carry, advanced security to systems, strong authentication, one-time password device, smart cards, ease in burden on developers, especially centralized management of users, roles, and fine-grained auditing. In terms of identity management, it encompasses directory services, authentication and authorization services as well, certificate authorities, administration, consoles, single sign-on, provisioning of different types of services. There are 4 types of single sign-on: Holy Grail single sign-on, legacy single sign-on, synchronization, and web single sign-on. Holy Grail is when you have one identity. That one identity gives you a single logon. That single logon to a single directory gives you access to all credentials. That is what you get with Windows Active Directory services. When you log on once, that gives you access to Windows resources. It is the most efficient, most secure, most compliant way to do single sign-on. However, it is a traditional single sign-on. Tradition in the sense that it allows a user to log on once using a single authentication method to gain access to multiple hosts and/or applications, may also provide access controls, authorization features. Authorization policies restrict which applications or system a user has access to and what the user can and cannot do on these applications and systems. Not entirely a new concept, but is under the what you call the Kerberos model in terms of setting up system policies for Windows 2000 server, either 2008 or 2003 Active Directory services. How does Holy Grail works? APIs and dynamic link libraries. In terms of the single sign-on authentication, each application or system uses either replacement DLLs or APIs, or scripts in terms of pieces of code that the client that manage the logon procedure on multiple systems, and as well as cookies in terms of web-based applications. What are the pros and cons of Holy Grail? Well, for the pros, for example, it's very easy to use. It reduces support costs, reduces logon cycles. However, for the cons, integration of legacy can be expensive and time-consuming. Single point of attack, of course, especially for Trojan horses, and scripting solutions often lead to storage of passwords and IDs on the client. This moves us to another concept of single sign-on, with another technology known as enterprise single sign-on, often called logon or login automation. The end user have a single login. The user log in once, but under the covers or behind the scene, the logon authentication tool logs them into everything else they need. Even though the user have more conveniences, the IT staff have to manage the identities of all the systems. All of the directories still exist, however, actual logon still happens on all these systems. There are 2 types, or basically there are 2 types of enterprise single sign-on. They have script-based and application wizard-based. These script-based will take the target application credentials and launch the applications. Requires modification of your desktop icons as well. Application wizard-based, as the name suggests, runs a service on the client that continuously monitors the workstation for logon dialog boxes. Event-based, I should say, cheaper and easier to deploy. Course, functionality, usability, application enablers, encryptions integrated with OS authentication, OS security, multiple directory support, password policy enforcement, backup and disaster recovery, maintenance and support are what you look for in some enterprise service logon products. Here are some examples of enterprise single sign-on products like Cyrex, Password Manager, Passlex, novel secure logon that a number of individuals are familiar with too as well, and as well as Microsoft Windows Server. Some of the pros and cons of enterprise single sign-on. Pros in terms of users has only one password to remember, usually fairly easy to implement, like for example what takes place at this institution, the University of the West Indies. But some of the cons would be to reduce the number of logons. It does not reduce it because a lot of logon information as well as authentication is happening in the background and only supports password authentication in this case. Synchronization, another technology, sometimes known as the same sign-on, cross-domain single sign-on as well. There is a tool that synchronizes all of the directories and all of the password across the entire system. For instance, in Active Directory and the mainframe logon is the same as the Active Directory logon. Multiple reams that manage user credentials. A user authenticates or is authenticated in one rem, gets signed on in an application using another rem, typically within the same enterprise. Again, it referred to as authentication platforms, provide a central point of management for multiple authentication schemes. Users authenticate to a gateway using any combination of authentication methods, smart cards, biometrics, just for an example. Support multiple layer authentication policies. But how does all of this work? Abstracts the authentication layer to an authentication gateway. All users log in to this gateway. Gateway determines level/type of authentication that is required. What are some of the pros and cons? Pros in terms of ease, integration with abstracted authentication layer, support for most authentication factors. Cons, does not reduce number of logons unless single sign-on is embedded in the authentication platform. Single point of attack/failure in terms of denial of service. Another technology, web single sign-on, allow users to log in remotely over the internet in a single login instead of multiple login in multiple web sessions. Browser-based applications, cookie support is required. Single sign-on to application deployed on a single web server or domain. How does all this work? Credentials are cached either through locally via cookies or on a server via state mechanism, automatically presented to a site as needed. Let's look at some of the pros and cons. For example, again, pros, easy to use, streamlined web experience. Cons was only restricted alone to the web. Sites may need to opt in, outsource trusted by third parties, and sometimes lose or loss of control. Here are some examples of the technologies that is available for single sign-on in terms of novel secure login. This is one of them, a true single sign-on technology. Here's a depiction of the graphic in terms of novel secure sign-on. All these slides will be available to the class and it will be emailed to you all so you all could examine these technologies in more detail. Here again is the Sun's Java Access Manager and the Oracle Oblix.